The cold wind of the north bit hard through the stone walls of Winterfell. Even for a Stark, it was cruel tonight. Eddard Stark stood alone in the godswood, his hand resting on the old, weeping heart tree, eyes closed. The whisper of leaves above sounded like faint voices, judging, questioning. He used to find peace here. Now it only brought the weight of memory. The raven had come at dusk. Black wings, dark words. Jon Arryn was dead. Dead, and Ned knew why. Not because of sickness, no matter what the letter from the capital claimed. Not because of age, not even because of the political poison slowly rotting the court. No, Jon had died because he got too close. He had asked too many questions. Questions Ned had no right to answer. Catelyn found him long after the sky darkened into a canvas of stars. She walked gently, as she always did in the godswood, though she had never worshipped the old gods. Her face was tight, concerned. She knew him too well not to sense when his spirit was heavier than his voice. "He raised you like a son," she said softly. "I know what he meant to you." Ned didn't answer right away. His thoughts were too far from grief. They were buried in a crypt beneath the frost and stone, in a promise, sealed nearly 2 decades ago. "He died for a secret," Ned finally said, barely above a whisper, "one that should have died with her." Catelyn looked at him, puzzled, but she said nothing. She had asked about Jon Snow once. Only once. The coldness that followed her question had made her promise never to ask again. In the Red Keep, a silence deeper than death lingered. Maester Pycelle shuffled through his chambers, muttering about potions and fevers. But the Grand Maester knew the truth, even if he wouldn't speak it. Others, too, had their suspicions. Varys had heard Jon Arryn's late-night visits to the old records chamber. Whispers in the black cells said the Hand had stumbled upon something never meant to be uncovered. The secret was not about Queen Cersei. It was not about her children. No, Jon hadn't died for a lie of incest. He died because he had found Ned Stark's truth, a truth buried with Lyanna Stark. Back in Winterfell, Ned sat in his solar, staring at the flickering candlelight, rereading the letter from King's Landing. "Fever took him quickly," it read. "Peaceful." Ned clenched it in his hand until the parchment crinkled like dry leaves. Peaceful. Jon Arryn had not known peace since the rebellion. He had lived with regret, and Ned had added to it with his silence. He remembered the last time they spoke in person, 3 years ago, when Jon had visited the north. The conversation started with children, with memories of Robert's youth, but it had turned. Jon had asked him then, as they walked the battlements, in the snow, "Why did you never tell Robert where you found the boy?" Ned had looked him dead in the eye. "Because Robert would kill him." Jon had nodded, but there was a heaviness in his eyes, as if the burden was no longer just Ned's to bear. "I hope you never have to pay for that silence, Ned," he had said. Now, Robert's letter followed Jon's, summoning him to serve. As Hand, to leave the north, to leave his family, to step into the mouth of the lion's den. Ned knew he couldn't say no, not without drawing suspicion, not without making Robert dig deeper. The king was no longer the brother of his youth. He was a drunk, a brute, and a man surrounded by vipers. But even a viper can see movement in the grass. The true danger wasn't in what Robert knew. It was in what others might find. If Jon had left anything behind, notes, records, hints, someone would come looking. And if they ever connected the boy Jon Snow to the last living Targaryen. Bloodline. Ned stood from his chair. The time for mourning was over. The time for protecting had come again. He went to Jon Snow that night, found the boy training with the sword under Sir Roderick's watch. The lad had talent, sharp reflexes. But that wasn't what worried Ned. Jon looked so much like Rhaegar it hurt. Ned had hidden the truth behind cold words and distant eyes. He had made the boy feel like a bastard, like an outsider, to keep him safe. It was the only way. But now the secret was bleeding. Jon Arryn had torn the wound open, and someone had stitched it shut with poison. Ned's eyes lingered on the boy as he swung his blade, so full of fire, so full of promise. If the world knew what he was, he would die before he ever had a chance to live. "I must go south," Ned said aloud, more to himself than anyone else. "And when I do, the wolves will be circling." The journey south was slow and grim, dragging Ned further from the frost-tipped lands of the north and deeper into the viper's nest of King's Landing. The royal procession was lavish, loud, and soaked in decadence, a sharp contrast to Ned's quiet, suspicious mind. King Robert rode ahead most days, drinking and jesting, mourning Jon Arryn in the most drunken way possible. His breath always reeked of ale, and his words had lost the weight they once carried in the rebellion. Power had bloated him, grief had rusted his sharp edges. But Ned watched. He watched Sir Jaime Lannister smile too much. He watched Cersei whisper to her brother, their eyes shifting when Robert wasn't looking. He noticed Varys, quiet as mist, always present but never involved. And Littlefinger, Petyr Baelish, grinned like a man who knew something no one else did, especially when he looked at Ned. Every shadow whispered treachery now. In the Red Keep, the air felt unnatural, like something had spoiled and no one dared open a window. When Ned entered the Hand's chambers, Jon Arryn's chambers, he felt it instantly. This was not the room of a man who died in peace. There were scrolls scattered on the floor, books stacked unevenly, a few volumes on noble houses. One lay open on the genealogy of House Targaryen. Ned picked it up and felt the hairs on his neck rise. He knew what Jon had been searching for, and now Jon was dead. The days passed like slow poison. Robert spent most of them with wine or whores. His council argued in circles, and everyone seemed to watch Ned too closely, especially Petyr Baelish, who wore a constant smirk. He offered help, friendship even, but Ned felt the stench of deceit on his every word. It was Petyr who brought the first true warning. "You know, Lord Stark," he said one morning in the gardens, voice smooth as silk, "Jon Arryn was asking many questions before he died." Ned's eyes narrowed. "About what? Lineage, bloodlines, bastards, old names, things that would seem harmless unless one were very clever or very dangerous. What are you implying?" Petyr leaned closer. "I'm implying, my lord, that not all secrets in the realm belong to the Queen. Some might belong to you." There was no warmth in Ned's chest, only cold rage. He forced himself not to react, not to let his fear show. "If you know something, speak it plain," he said. Petyr only smiled. "Secrets are safer when they're shared. I only wonder, if you don't reveal yours, who will?" That night, Ned paced in the solar. Maester Pycelle had been of little use, claiming Jon had succumbed to a fever, but Ned had seen the symptoms himself. Poison, perhaps not in the cup, but in the knowledge Jon uncovered. Was someone close to Robert working to bury more than one lie? Was it possible that in trying to protect Jon Snow, Ned had made an enemy, far more dangerous than Cersei Lannister? He sent a raven that night to Howland Reed, the only other man alive who knew the truth of Jon Snow's birth. If they find the boy's truth, they will kill him. Burn this after reading. In the dark alleys of Flea Bottom, Varys walked like a whisper. He met his birds in silence, listened, offered coins, vanished. When he returned to his hidden chambers, he wrote a single name in red ink: Jon Snow. The whispers had reached him. The boy was not Ned Stark's. The blood in him ran deeper, deadlier. If Jon Arryn had known this and died for it, the realm was not safe. Not from Robert's rage, not from the Lannisters, not from the truth. A week later, Ned found a torn page under Jon Arryn's mattress. Old, brittle parchment, a line of Targaryen ancestry with a scribbled note at the bottom. The boy's name is Aegon, not Stark, Targaryen. Ned froze. Jon had known. He had discovered it. Someone had found out and made sure Jon wouldn't speak again. Ned felt the weight of doom crash into his chest. If this got out, Robert wouldn't stop until Jon Snow's head was on a spike. And if the Lannisters got hold of it, they'd twist it for their own ends. Either way, blood would fall. His boy, his sister's son, the last breath of Lyanna. Ned knew he had to move faster than the shadows, because now they weren't just circling. They were closing in. King's Landing had always felt too warm, too loud, too suffocating. The streets buzzed with gossip like flies over rot, and in the Red Keep, every wall had ears. Ned walked slower now, careful in every word, every glance. The silence around Jon. Arryn's death was no longer still. It was loaded. He spent the mornings cloaked in the duties of hand, justice petitions, tax debates, grain shipments. But each night he returned to the old pages Jon had left behind, the torn genealogy, the scrawled name, the realization that his quiet lie had been unearthed by someone with a sharper eye and a deadlier reason. There were too many players, and not enough time. One morning, Ned stood beside the window in the Hands Tower as the sun filtered weakly through the heavy curtains. He stared toward the gates of the city, trying to picture Jon Snow back in Winterfell. He imagined the boy training with Robb, laughing with Arya, dreaming about the Night's Watch. Jon knew nothing of Aegon, of Rhaegar, of the lie that had been sewn around him like a cloak. He was never meant to know. Now the realm was pulling at threads, and Ned didn't know which stitch would unravel first. Sir Barristan Selmy approached him later that day, walking with the straight-backed honour of a man untouched by courtly corruption. "My lord," Barristan said, lowering his voice, "I served with Jon Arryn. He was troubled. In his final days he confided in no one, but he requested certain records, Targaryen lineages mostly, bastard laws, history of succession." Ned tensed. Did he say why? No. Only that he was looking for a seed, he said. A seed lost in a storm. Ned's heart stopped. The words were too pointed. Did anyone else know of this? Barristan hesitated. I believe Lord Varys knew. Perhaps even Lord Baelish. Jon did not trust easily, but he was desperate near the end. He began to speak to people he once would have avoided, and that was his mistake, Ned thought bitterly. Truth in the wrong ears was more dangerous than any sword. That night, a hooded figure entered Ned's chambers silently. It was Peter Baelish again, smiling like a man who walked between two worlds. "Secrets are dangerous, Lord Stark," he said, lounging in the corner. "Jon learned that too late." Ned didn't rise from his chair. He simply stared. "What do you want?" "To help," Petter said with that same unshakable smugness. "I like keeping dangerous things close. They make life exciting." "You're not helping me." "Oh, I think I am. I think you're chasing shadows and truth when you should be digging graves." Ned clenched his fists. "What do you know?" Petter leaned in. "I know that if Jon Arryn had spoken his truth aloud, your son, your precious bastard, would be dead by now. I know there are others who have pieced enough together to sniff the blood on your hands. I know that someone very close to you is feeding whispers to Varys. And I know, if you don't kill this truth, someone else will." He dropped a folded note on the table, then turned and left with no explanation. Ned opened it. Inside was a name, Jane Waters, a bastard girl of noble blood, one Jon Arryn had visited weeks before his death. Another thread, another whisper. Meanwhile, in Winterfell, Jon Snow stood at the wall, staring into the vast northern darkness. He had taken his vows, proud and solemn, but something stirred uneasily in his chest. He felt it in the cold, like a storm was coming, not from beyond the wall, but from the south. Sam told him one night in a whisper that a raven had come to Castle Black. No words, just a black feather soaked in red wax, an old sigil, a message unsent, meant only for Lord Commander Mormont. John wondered if it was about his father, or, worse, about him. Back in King's Landing, Ned sent a raven to Stannis Baratheon, knowing full well the man was iron-willed and proud, but not corrupt. He didn't trust Petter. He didn't trust Varys. Stannis was his last chance to anchor truth in honor. He wrote only, "Jon Arryn died with secrets. I now carry them. Meet me in Storm's End if I do not return within a fortnight." Then he burned every scrap of Targaryen history Jon Arryn had left. It was too late to keep secrets. Now it was about survival. The next morning, Ned opened his eyes to find a dagger pressed against his throat and a whisper in the dark. "You should have stayed in the north." The blade didn't move. For one long breath, Ned held still, feeling the chill of cold, steel against his skin. The room was silent, shadows flickering from the dying fire. The hand holding the dagger was steady, trained. This wasn't a thief or a drunk guard. This was a warning or an execution. Then the voice came again, low, raspy, almost calm. "You think you're the only one with secrets, Stark?" Ned spoke without panic, slow and measured. "If you meant to kill me, you'd have done it already." The dagger lifted a fraction. "No, you're worth more alive, but not much longer." Then the weight disappeared. A shuffle of movement, a breeze of air, and the figure was gone. Ned sat up, breathing heavy, sweat cold on his back. He reached for ice, his greatsword, but the room was empty. No guard had entered, no alarm was raised. The enemy didn't want him dead. Yet. They wanted him afraid. He summoned his most trusted man in the capital the next morning, Jory Castle. "Double the guard at my door. Nobody enters unless I call them by name." Jory raised an eyebrow. "Even if it's the king?" Ned hesitated. "Especially if it's the queen." Jory nodded and left without another word. Cersei came to him not long after, draped in silk and arrogance. She entered without invitation, flanked by two silent Lannister guards. "You've made quite a stir since your arrival, Lord Stark," she said, circling his solar like a lioness waiting for a limp. "I didn't ask for this post. Yet here you are, digging, asking questions, stirring dust best left untouched." Ned stared at her coldly. "You speak as if truth is dangerous." She smiled thinly. "In King's Landing it's fatal." Their eyes locked. She stepped closer. Jon Arryn thought he could uncover everything, that his hands were clean. "Do not make the same mistake." "Is that a threat?" "No," she said with a soft sigh. "A lesson." And then she was gone, perfume lingering like poison in the air. Varys arrived the following evening as expected, slipping into Ned's chambers as if he lived in the shadows. "My Lord Hand," he said with mock reverence, "may I offer a word of unsolicited counsel?" Ned turned from the window. "If it's about Jon Arryn, I've heard enough riddles." "Ah, but truth rarely comes wrapped in clarity," Varys said, folding his hands. "What if I told you that Jon Arryn's search led not just to bloodlines, but to those who protect them? What if his death was a compromise?" Ned frowned. "Speak plainly." Varys approached slowly. "There are those in this city who know of the boy in the north. They speak of him not as a bastard, but as a dragon's son. And they would see him either crowned or killed." Ned's jaw tightened. "Jon was going to tell Robert," Varys continued, "not just about the Lannisters, but about you and the boy." Ned stepped forward, fists clenched. "If anyone touches him, they won't. Not if you act quickly. The moment Robert knows the truth, your son is doomed. The Queen will strike first to protect her own brood. And Robert, he'll swing the sword himself." Later that night, Ned returned to the godswood of the Red Keep. It was the only place in this cursed city where the old gods still listened. The heart tree was pale and tired, but it stood. He knelt beneath it. "I've kept my promise," he whispered, "but it's breaking me. I've lied to my wife. I've raised him like my own, and now the lie may kill him." The gods, as always, said nothing, but the wind stirred, and he felt no comfort. News arrived from Winterfell the next day, a raven with the Stark sigil. The note was short. "Jon has joined the watch. No one suspects. He is safe for now." Relief washed through Ned like rain, but it didn't last. That evening, Sir Renly Baratheon delivered a sealed scroll. "Stannis is gone," Renly said, worried. "He left Dragonstone in silence. No word, no banners, just vanished." Ned read the message. Stannis knew, or suspected. If he acted too, soon he would force Robert's hand. Everything was unraveling. That night, a fire consumed a storehouse in Flea Bottom. Among the bodies pulled from the wreckage was a girl, young, with dark hair and noble features. The city watch called it an accident. Ned knew better. It was Jane Waters, the last thread Jon Arryn had pulled, and someone had cut it. The bells of King's Landing tolled for the dead girl found in the ashes, but the city barely paused. Fires were common in Flea Bottom. Accidents, they said. Thieves, drunkards, carelessness. But Ned knew what this fire meant. It was a message. Jane Waters had been silenced, and if her death was orchestrated by the same hand that killed Jon Arryn, then Ned's time was almost up. He stood over the charred report delivered by the City Watch, watching the ink bleed into his fingers as he clenched it. He could still remember the name on Peter's note, the look in Varys's eyes when he spoke of dragons and death. It all led to one inevitable truth. Someone powerful, someone patient, was tying up every loose end that could reveal Jon Snow's true heritage. Aegon Targaryen. The court had grown colder toward Ned. Cersei barely looked at him now, and when she did, her gaze was filled with contempt. Robert grew more restless with each passing day. His laughter was louder, but his temper quicker. Once, over wine, Robert slammed a goblet down and muttered, "Jon Arryn was always better at hiding things. You wear your guilt like a cloak, Ned." Ned said nothing, but the words sliced deep. In his solitude, Ned began to draft his final strategy. He knew he couldn't keep the secret buried forever. The walls were closing in. He had 3 choices, each deadlier than the last. First, tell Robert everything. Reveal that Jon Snow was not his bastard, but Rhaegar's son. The honest path, the foolish path. Robert would go mad with fury. His hatred of Targaryens ran deeper than any friendship. Second, take Jon and flee, leave his post, his honor, everything, disappear into the north or even beyond the wall. But the boy was already at Castle Black. There was no running now. Third, weaponize the secret. Use it as leverage against the Lannisters, or even Stannis. Play their game. Threaten exposure to force silence. But that path was poison, and he had never been a man for poison. That night, Ned met with Peter Baelish. Again, in a brothel, a place he despised. "Strange choice of location," Ned said as he entered the room, ignoring the half-dressed women who lingered in the hall. "Stranger secrets demand stranger places," Peter replied with a crooked smile. Ned sat. "Tell me everything you know about Jon Arryn's final days." Peter sighed theatrically. He saw something in the records, lineages, blood rights, something that didn't add up. He visited bastards, not just Robert's. He was looking for patterns. He found mine. "Oh yes," Peter said, "and he realized your bastard wasn't yours at all. But more importantly, he suspected you weren't protecting the boy for selfish reasons. You were protecting the bloodline of a usurped house." Why didn't he tell Robert? He was waiting for proof, or maybe for courage. Ned stared at him. "Did you kill him?" Petter grinned. "If I had, would you be here asking or buried beside him?" That answer chilled him more than any direct threat could. Ned returned to the Red Keep in silence. He passed Sir Jaime on the stairs. The Kingslayer gave him a long look, amused, like he knew the game was already lost. "Be careful, Lord Stark," Jaime said, his tone dripping with mockery. "Secrets. Don't stay buried long in King's Landing, especially when they involve dragons." Ned didn't answer. He kept walking, but the venom in those words stayed with him. That evening he received word from the wall, a raven with a single line. In a rough hand, Maester Eamon's writing. "The blood of the dragon flows strong. Even here it burns." Ned gripped the message until his knuckles turned white. They knew. Even in the frozen north, someone had seen through the lie. At dawn, Ned wrote his final letters. One to Catelyn. "Protect Jon, no matter the cost. Keep him far from the eyes of kings." One to Robb. "Winter may come sooner than you expect. Be ready to lead." And one to Jon. "You are more than you believe, more than they would ever let you be. Do not chase the crown. Chase what is right." He sealed them with wax, gave them to a trusted courier, told him to ride north without stopping. Then he returned to the throne room to face the storm. The throne room was silent when Ned entered, except for the hum of tension beneath its stone skin. King Robert sat lazily on the Iron Throne, a goblet already in hand, his eyes heavy from wine and weariness. Cersei stood nearby, still as a statue carved from gold and bitterness. Varys and Pycelle lingered in the corners, and Petyr Baelish leaned against a pillar with that insufferable half-smile. Ned walked straight to the base of the throne. "Your Grace," he said evenly, "we must speak." Robert sighed. "If this is more talk of my children or my wife, I'll have your tongue out. I'm sick of whispers." "It's not about them," Ned said. "It's about Jon Arryn and why he was killed." Cersei's gaze sharpened. Petyr tilted his head. Robert raised an eyebrow. "Go on, then." Ned didn't flinch. "Jon discovered a secret that would destroy the realm, if revealed too soon. A truth about a boy raised in Winterfell, a boy you believed was mine." The goblet stopped halfway to Robert's lips. "I've lied to you," Ned continued. "I did it to keep a promise, to protect a child. He is not my son. His name is Jon Snow, but that name is false too." Varys stepped forward, whispering softly. "My lord." "No," Ned interrupted. "Let it be said here. Let them all hear it." He took a breath. "Jon Snow is the son of Rhaegar Targaryen, and Lyanna Stark." The room froze. Not even the wind dared to speak. Robert stared at him, slowly lowering his goblet. His face paled beneath the flush of drink. "You lie," he said hoarsely. "You lie." "I was there," Ned said, voice steady, "at the Tower of Joy. Lyanna died in my arms. Her last words were his name. I swore I'd protect him. From you." Robert rose, slowly, like a storm gathering on the sea. "You raised a dragon under my nose?" "I raised my sister's son," Ned said. "He's no threat to your throne. He never wanted it. He never even knew." Robert's fists clenched. "You betrayed me. I protected a child from a world that would kill him for a name. If that's betrayal, then I accept it." Cersei finally spoke. "He's the last Targaryen," she said softly. "That makes him a threat, no matter what you say." Peter's eyes danced between them all, silently measuring who would fall. First, the next hours passed in a blur. Ned was confined to his chambers under protective arrest. He knew what that meant. Robert was furious, betrayed, but not ready to kill him. Not yet. Cersei was less patient. Varys visited in the night. "You've doomed the boy," he whispered. "Even if Robert spares you, others will not." Cersei wants his head. Stannis may claim the throne for himself, now that the Targaryen bloodline has returned. I had to tell the truth. Varys shook his head. Truth does not win wars, Lord Stark. Lies do, and you just lit the first match. 2 days later, Robert sent for him. The king sat alone, the Iron Throne towering behind him, empty. He looked old, tired, angry beyond words. I should have your head, Robert said. Ned waited. But I loved your sister, Robert went on, more than anything. And you loved her more than I did, didn't you? That's why you kept her son from me. I did, and now the whole damn realm is going to bleed for it. Ned said nothing. There was no defense. Robert sighed. I won't kill you, but you're no longer Hand. You'll return to Winterfell today. If you speak another word of this to anyone, I'll reconsider. I accept that. But the boy stays at the wall. Ned froze. He's not safe. He's safer there than anywhere near me, or my wife. Let him rot with the crows. Ned's jaw tightened, but he nodded. He had no choice. On the road back north, Ned rode in silence. The wind was colder than he remembered. His soul was heavier. The letter to Jon had never left his cloak. He read it one last time before burning it to ash. You are more than you believe, more than they would ever let you be. Do not chase the crown, chase what is right. The secret was no longer a burden he could carry. Now it belonged to time and to fate. Far to the north, Jon Snow stood on the wall, staring into the white beyond. He felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. A pull in his blood, a fire beneath his skin. He didn't know what it meant, but soon he would, because the realm was changing, and the dragon's blood was waking.